Hello everyone! In today's video, I'll be continuing the 1/24 scale Menace II Society 1992 Ford Mustang GT Convertible build that I introduced a couple weeks ago. As always, I'll be sure to include a link to this project's playlist below in the description if you'd like to watch the first part of this series. In the last video, I assembled the 3D printed chassis, built some body mounts, and wired all of the electronics. In today's video, I'll be doing some body work and begin getting all of the parts painted, so let's dive right in. So with the car driving and the body mounts in place, all that's left to do at this point is the fun cosmetic stuff. As you might recall in the last video, I mentioned how the front tires were rubbing against the body while turning left and right. To fix this, I used a rotary tool and side cutters to carefully remove some material around the front and rear of the wheel arch. Perfect. I made sure to clean up the edge a bit with some sandpaper. After that, I started sanding all around the body, removing any imperfections such as mold lines and areas where the parts were attached to the tree. The body is very well molded, so not a lot of work is required, but there are some prominent mold lines in spots such as the front fenders that need to be removed. This work will improve the appearance of the finished car. Next, I sanded the entire body with 600 grit sandpaper to help with paint adhesion. I also cleaned up the edge that I cut to remove the inner fender and firewall section. Also, I made sure the hood and front bumper fit well and don't require any more work. Here I'm deepening all the panel gaps using a hobby knife and pick tool. I used a brush to remove any bits of plastic stuck in the panel gaps. After that, I glued the front bumper to the body, using plenty of glue to make sure it doesn't come off while driving. I also test fit the headlights. As I've done before, I wanted to sand the transition between the body and front bumper to make it more flush, since the bumper is sitting a little low. Here's what the body looks like so far. The body is looking great overall, however the hood didn't want to sit quite right, and it's also very loose fitting, so I decided to use magnets to make a sort of hood latch as I've done on previous builds. I made some holes for the magnets to fit into, and then glued one magnet to the body and one to the underside of the hood. Here's what it looks like completed. It helps keep the hood in place and prevents it from falling off. I won't be adding a detailed engine bay to this car, however one could be added in the future if desired. So that's the main reason I didn't want to just glue the hood to the body like I've done with some cars in the past. With the body prepped for primer, I moved on to getting all of the other parts that I'll be using, like the mirrors, convertible top, luggage rack, and so on. These parts needed just a little work as well, but it wasn't long before they were ready. After one final pass with some 600 grit sandpaper, the body and all additional parts were looking great and ready for the next step. I washed all the parts and let them dry before applying primer to the body and paint to the other parts. While that was drying, I turned my attention to the interior. I already modified the interior to fit over the chassis in the previous video, so all I needed to do was ensure everything fits, clean up any rough edges, and assemble the seats. I glue the two halves of the seats together, and later I'll be adding filler around the edge where the two parts meet, so the transition is smooth. I applied it pretty thick, so I'll be coming back later to sand it once it dries. The rest of the interior is looking good and is ready for paint. By this time, the primer was dry, and I could do some sanding. The primer is nice for identifying any sections of the body that might need some more work. Fortunately, everything was looking good, so all I did was wet sand the entire surface with some 600 grit sandpaper to prepare it for paint. After another wash, I applied the paint. Switching back over to the bench, the filler was dry, so I sanded it down to make a nice smooth transition between the front and back half of the seats. Once that was done, I applied primer. I was going to paint the seats right after the primer dries, however I remembered that I'm probably going to need to cut the driver's seat some so it clears the steering servo, so I'll be waiting until I confirm the driver's seat fits before I paint the seats. Switching gears again over to the wheels, I sprayed some chrome paint onto each and gave it plenty of time to dry. I then hand painted the centers gold. The result turned out looking great. I finished by stretching over a set of Make It RC 17x26x8 silicone tires. The body turned out very nice with the green paint. It's not perfectly smooth, but once I give it time to fully dry, I'll be wet sanding the paint and applying a clear coat, as well as painting the lower trim silver, which I'll be covering in the next video. Here's a look at everything so far. Lots more details to come, but of course I want to give the paint plenty of time to cure. I'm really excited to see this car completed, and I hope you are as well. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel, as I'll be posting the final video of this build in a few weeks, which I think you all are really going to enjoy. You'll find links to the parts I'm using below in the description, if you'd like to do a similar build yourself. Also, if you'd like access to exclusive content and early video releases, as well as help make more content like this possible, consider becoming a member on Patreon. Again, I'll be sure to include the link below. That's all for today's video. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.